rebelling against my parents. So I started being arrested almost on a weekly basis, going through high school for, petty thefts, trying to find anything that I could think in my 15, 16-year-old brain to get my parents to send me packing back to Quebec. So I guess I have to give credit to my parents on this one because they stuck it out and they kept me around all through my high school career. And then from there I went to college, and this is where I met you. What did I miss? Oh, yeah, I guess I shouldn't leave that part out.
No.
So, fast forward a few years, I've always been a very stubborn man. So I graduated high school, I go to college, first year college in Kingston, and of course, get back back home at the time was Brockville for me. So of course I was into, drinking, drugs, whatever I could do to just forget about life and just party as hard as I could. And sure enough, that one night, I pulled the craziest stunt of my life where I ended up stealing a vehicle with a friend of mine after a night out. Proceeded to take the police on about an hour and a half police chase between Brockville and Gananoque, and finally we get arrested, and that and then I got sentenced to 6 months in prison because of that.
In Hackney?
And yeah, so after all, and of course, of all places, I served my sentence here at the Quinte Detention Center for 6 months. And I'll leave it at that for now. We'll come back to that a little bit later. So I'll let you do that.
Okay. So I was raised in a house that sort of went to church, kind of like Steve. For about 3 or 4 years, my family was involved in a United Church. And I went. It was my mom and my sister and I. My dad never went to church. And it was just something we did on Sundays, but it wasn't really an investment at all in anybody's life. It was just, we went to church and that was kind of it. I never had heard a lot of the talk of like relationship with Jesus or giving your life to him or any of those things. That was all, like that, none of that. I never prayed really at all. So I didn't really have a lot of background in church at all. When I was 18, my parents got divorced, and that was like the catalyst for me. Like Steve's was moving here. I rebelled significantly in the years after that. I went to university for 2 years, and I did very poorly, and did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done at the time. And then I ended up not being able to go back. And so I ended up going to college in Belleville. My mom lived relatively close to Belleville at the time, and she had a house there that she was renting out, and it was empty, and that's where I could go and not have to pay rent. So that's kind of why I ended up going to Belleville, or why I thought I ended up going to Belleville. And then Steve was at Loyalist College for the second time.
Second time.
So third time in college, but the second time he was working on a diploma at Loyalist. And we ended up meeting at a party of someone that was in his class, and my roommate's boyfriend at the time. And so we met there.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. And then
and surprisingly, we still remember.
Yeah. So we both were not really, like, we were kind of still both very much in the partying phase, and were doing a lot of things. Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's fill in the blank.
5 months after we met and started dating, we found out that we were pregnant. And so that was kind of a reality hit for us. And we, a month after that, ended up moving in together.
Yep.
2 months, 1 month, something like that. And so less than a year after we started dating, we had our oldest child.
Yeah.
And so yeah, 2 years later, we had Natalie.
We got married in there.
We did. Yeah. In 1 year, we had Leanne graduated college,
Moved into her first home, had her first baby, got married,
yeah,
and started attending church.
and started attending church at a United Church.
Yeah.
And then we had Madeline, that pastor left that church. Steve ended up getting a job in Natalie. We ended up buying a house here, and his job is
Yeah.
kitty corner. You'll share that?
I can share that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, sorry. So then about a year after we were here, I started doing home daycare. And from there, I met Penny. Some people may know her. She goes to Roblin Church. And we started talking and building a relationship. And one Sunday, she said Steve and I were in a very...
We were in a bad spot, and I'll take the blame for it, really. I was still struggling with some of my own addictions, my own fears, my own insecurities, trying to navigate, 2 kids now, a marriage, a career. It was all too much for me. I mean, up until I met Natalie, my longest relationship was probably like 2 weeks, because as soon as it got serious, I was the guy that just ran. It's like, no, you're not getting close to me, I'm out of here. So I was going through a lot of things. I had broken her trust very severely, to the point where at that point, I think I was sleeping still on the couch at Todd's house.
Yeah.
So I was sleeping on the couch at a friend's house in Deserano, while she was trying to figure out what this whole relationship was going to be about, what this marriage was meant for us, for her. I was trying to figure out what this whole marriage meant for us. So our marriage was on the rocks. And sure enough, Penny comes in the picture.
Invites us to church.
Invites us to church at a friend's day at Roblin.
So the first time that we had kind of been in the same room, for probably about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We were online researching what it meant to be a Wesleyan, because we had no idea what a Wesleyan church was. So that was kind of the start of it.
Yeah.
We went on that Sunday, and it was a lot for us. This was a lot for me.
Yeah.
The raising of the hands thing was
And
a lot.
I think a lot of people have, we hear a lot of people say, and we're one of them, where we walked out of Roblin Church, and she says, what do you think? My first words were, they're all nuts. Every one of them. But then the second words that came out of our mouth was, we're going back next weekend. Like, we are going back. So as intimidating as it was, there was definitely a moving, like, now we know it was the Holy Spirit moving through us. Back then, it felt like these weird emotions were coming up, and that there was things we needed to work through, and it just felt right. And I felt at peace about it, and that's where things sort of started.
So we went that Sunday, and kind of basically every Sunday since, with some exceptions. We, within like 2 months, joined a small group, and that small group kind of walked us through all kinds of questions and things. It was a bunch of people who were mature Christians, and we had a lot of questions. And it was not until the following summer at camp on different days that we both decided that we were kind of in it for the long haul. And when the call was Does anybody feel like they want to say the prayer?
Yeah, of
I was
course.
I was sitting in the chair, on the third pole down over on the side there. I remember where I was. And so yeah, and so we both made the decision that week and didn't tell each other until the week was over. We just were kind of waiting for the other one because we don't want to pressure each other, but we both already made the choice, so it was kind of neat.
It was neat. And going back to the first small group, I think we can both agree that that first small group really laid a really strong foundation for us. So, Heather, I think you're the only one here tonight from that small group, but thank you to you and the rest of the gang because it was really good. Yeah.
And then we had, so 2 years after that,
Yeah, it was 2 years after.
at camp, Pastor Ian Dunn was the speaker that year, and he was talking about I had felt kind of stalled, and I didn't know what I was kind of new. I didn't really know what to do next. And his sermons that week were about things that you were holding on to spiritually and walls that you had put up that you wouldn't let God through, and that sometimes the spiritual is connected to the physical. And I was having significant back issues. We had Zachary. After every pregnancy, it had gotten worse, and it was taking me about an hour to get out of bed in the morning. I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't stand for very long. I couldn't sit for very long. It was getting to a point where it was quite a lot. And there were a lot of things from when I left home and was in university for those 2 years that I really hadn't dealt with. That I just thought, okay, I'm a Christian now. I'm not doing those things anymore. I just don't need to deal with it. But I think that a lot of that was weighing on me, and I could feel it while he was preaching about it. So I had spoken to him the last day that he was here, and so he had said, after service, I would like you to pray through those things, and gave me things to do in the afternoon. And so when we met after service, he said, I'm going to pray for this, this, and this is what we're going to do. And I said, okay. And he said, is there anything else that you want to pray for? And I said, well, I have back pain, and I'd like that to go away. And that was all that I said. And he said, okay. And so we were over on this side, and Faye and Sterling were praying with us, and he prayed through everything. And when he was done, he took his hand and he put it on my spine in the exact spot. And I hadn't said anything, in the exact spot where it hurt. And he just talked about the pain that was there, and there's the things that he was saying were exactly what I was going through. And I could feel warmness from going from the top of my head all the way down to my toes. And then it was done, and I just was kind of okay, and I got up and didn't really think anything about it. And then we were staying here at camp, and I got up the next morning, and I got out of bed, as soon as I woke up.
No, you got up, you woke up, and we both looked over, and I looked at you, and I'm like, how you doing? And she, biggest smile on her face, and she's dancing in the bed. I was like, my back doesn't hurt.
So then I got right out of bed that day. So I didn't really notice anything at night, but when I got out of bed the next morning, it was fine. I was healed. And I have not had back pain since. So that was a complete healing. 8 years, yeah. So that was a healing for me. And that was kind of the catalyst for my stronger faith in if God can do that, then I can do whatever he asks us to do. Mm-hmm. Shortly after that, we ended up switching small groups, which was a scheduling thing, and it was really difficult for us because that was we were in a small group that we had that was really part of why helped us become Christians. God really used them, and we had to switch, and that was kind of tough for us. But
Yeah, because you know, like we were all new at this, and that small group had really built us up. We had learned so much from them. Yeah, it was a tough time to think that all of a sudden the people that we were counting on and relying on for our own personal growth, and especially in spiritual growth, all of a sudden they weren't going to be part of that anymore. I mean, we would still see them at church, we would still, you know, touch base occasionally, but it just wasn't the same. So, but God had different plans.
And He knew that we needed these people. So, in there, so it would have been 5 years ago.
Almost 6, a little bit over
In 2017, is that better? 2016. In 2016, in January of 2016, Steve got changed jobs, well, within the same company, but changed jobs, which had him traveling a week a month, and that was kind of an adjustment for us. He came home for lunch every day. He worked so close, and so that was a bit of an adjustment for us, and we look back now and know that that was preparation for us. And then February of that same year, my son was starting school in September, and we had always said that I would stay home until the kids were in school full time. And he was going to school, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next, and really felt like I was supposed to go back to school, but didn't really know what I was supposed to do. And then in the spring, I kind of felt like I knew what I was supposed to do and where I was supposed to go, but I was not willing to admit that. And then after camp, at camp that year, I really knew that Kingswood University in Sussex, New Brunswick was where I was supposed to be going.
The speakers that year kind of, I don't know, I think God worked through them too, we had been praying, and it had come up in conversations a few times, and then of course the preachers that came that year was Jason and Carolina, right, Parker? Yeah. And those two are on fire. So anyway, they were so fantastic, and it just happened like every night we were in the dining hall that year playing games and constantly asking them questions, and they always had an answer to every question we had.
Yeah. So we decided that I was going to Kingswood, and through a lot of prayer and figuring stuff out, decided that Steve was not coming with me. So we really felt like I was leaving to prepare to come back. And so it didn't make sense on a lot of levels for him to change jobs just for 3.5 years and then come back and have to rebuild. So he stayed here, and we put our house up for sale, and I moved to Sussex with the 3 kids. Who were 5, 9, and 11. And I moved with them to New Brunswick. And through our time in New Brunswick, Steve was with us for about a week a month. The longest we went without him was in second year, we went 5 weeks. 6 weeks? And it was an accident. It was a scheduling error that had that happen, but it was typically about 3 or 4 weeks. Of course it was. So there was a lot of things that I went through in New Brunswick. There was 2 people in particular that I became friends with that really helped. One was another mature student, and another one was a younger student, but she really helped in terms of like childcare things, and she would pick up Zachary because Natalie and Liam were at different schools than him, and it just kind of every semester things just kind of worked out in terms of picking up and those kinds of things. That was a huge concern for us, and it just always worked. And we went through a lot of, for the first 6 months that we were there, our oldest child was really angry with us for moving, so that was something that we worked through. We had dental emergencies with our youngest child, and like scheduling and trying to figure all of that out. I never missed a chapel, and I never missed a class. And I only once ever missed what we call at school Pulse. On Wednesdays there's no class, but it was the whole school had like kind of like seminars together. Yeah, so I only missed one of those. So in all of that, I was still able to fully do everything that I was there to do. And there definitely was a lot of people there that were really that really helped us. Another big part of our relationship was really good when I left. Ever since we really have become Christians, about 2 years in, things have been really good. We've not really had any huge things along the way. Just a few little ones. Okay. But when we were together after during the 4 years while we were apart. There was lots of comments about, oh, you guys are so lovey now, or you're so close because you haven't been together for so long. And at first I was like, oh yeah, maybe that's it. And then as time went on, I really felt like that wasn't it at all. I think that we really grew closer in the distance because we had to communicate so much more. So we were spending way more time on the phone with each other talking, like we weren't watching TV together or playing games or doing those kinds of things. Like our time together was spent talking about everything. And that really strengthened our relationship for whatever we have in the future and what we had during those 4 years. So,
Where do you want me to go?
Well, you talk about us being away.
Us, you being away?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess before I talk about that, I want to go back a little bit about the fact that I was in prison in Natalie. And now my job for the last 13 years has been, if anybody knows Natalie, there's a company called Continental Conveyor that is literally kitty corner from the prison. And this is really where my walk with God started, is that one day I was sitting at work, just working away, and I just felt somebody telling me, look where I've taken you to, and look where I brought you from. And I just happened to look out the window, staring at the prison, and remembering that that's where I used to be. But now I've been able to, through God's grace, been able to have a career, a family, and all that. That job that He provided me also over the years, like she said, in January of 2016, I had the opportunity at work to change my career. My career was in the manufacturing engineering, so I used to program the machines and make sure things were being built the way they were supposed to be built. So I had an opportunity to go from that to go into a sales and get a sales territory where I would travel every month and meet customers and be out of the house. So that, God had a plan there, because all of a sudden He prepared my family and myself for us to be apart on a regular basis. So every month I was gone for a week, every week, and the only communication we had during that time was over the phone. So that was, pretty planned by somebody. We didn't think of it. So that was another, when you look back, there was a plan in place. So then we moved forward again. They moved away to New Brunswick. Part of that plan as well.
We sold our house.
We sold our house. So part of the plan, all of a sudden, if you remember, we said scheduling things didn't work. We had to change small group. So all of a sudden, we're changing a new small group, and we're building new relationship. We're continuously growing in Christ. And then we sell our house. Her and the kids pack up to go to New Brunswick. I am now homeless, basically. Well, we have these friends that we built a relationship through our small group that say, you know what, our basement is empty, it's yours. So I got the opportunity to live in our friend's basement for 4 years. And then, of course, we have bright ideas. So after her first year, we said, well, we'll talk to Brenda and Bert, and maybe we can just live at camp for the summer. So we did.
And that was the last time.
That was the last time we did that.
We spent 4 months in the tent trailer.
So that was quite the experience. But then our friends, again, so gracious, they said, okay, you guys are not living at camp anymore. So when your family comes home every summer, everybody's living in the basement. Everybody was living in a house. So every summer for the 4 months, there was 7 of us in our home. We were just like one happy family. So again, God had worked all these things out for us through our Christian friends. It was just pretty amazing to look back on. While they were away, not only did we have these great Christian friends that were supporting me here, but I got to meet some pretty incredible men at Kingswood that were there for my kids and my family when I couldn't be there. And again, that was God working through them. So we had Rod, excuse me, who would take my son to hockey practice and hockey game when Natalie couldn't get away. We had students, Warner, that would come and play with the kids. And Zachary is a boy that loves to wrestle. And if I wasn't able to be there, there was a student there that would come by and they could wrestle. And so there was all these men that poured into my kids and my family when I couldn't be there. And that's only thanks to God and all the work and everything He's prepared ahead of time when my family was there. So for that, I'm very, very thankful. What else? That new job gave me the flexibility to come and go and visit my family every month. So my job was able to give me the flexibility to be up Northern Ontario for a week. Then I would be in Napanee for a week. Then I would be in New Brunswick for a week. And I would just continuously do this rotation of driving opposite directions.
We tried counting how many trips he'd done.
We lost
We
track.
think it's about between 30 to 40.
Yeah,
in the last 4 years.
And all that, again, with God's protection, not once did I get any accidents, got caught in traffic, was ever late, or a couple of bad snowstorms, but again, protected all the way there. Looking back, there's no way somebody makes 40 trips in one direction and doesn't run into any kind of issues, and not once did I have any issues, which is pretty amazing. So,
There's been so many things. It's hard to say that.
I don't know. You just got so much. We can keep going.
I know, well, we can't. Time
Everybody's got to go to bed eventually.
My last 4 years at Kingswood have meant a lot to me. I have never questioned. It gave me the opportunity to because Kingswood is a Wesleyan university, but there are more denominations that go there than just Wesleyan. And so you hear other people talking and you hear other things, and we learn about other things in classes about other denominations. And so it really gave me a chance to grow in my faith, to figure out what I actually believe. If I believe the same things that the Wesleyan Church does, because going to church for 6 years prior, I didn't know a lot of the things that the Wesleyan Church believed, and so it really strengthened my faith, learning more about it, and those are things that I never would have gone and done on my own. And this last, every year, Kingswood has a verse of the year, and you get a little card, we all get them, and every time that a professor or the president speaks in chapel, they always speak on the verse of the year. And I always gained significant amounts of knowledge and understanding from those things. But the last year, So I was only there September to December because I was in internship from January to April. So the 2020-2021 verse was, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured on the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. It is Hebrews 12:1-2. And so a lot of the talk that they were talking about when I was there was focusing on like the great cloud of witnesses, and it was in that time that I really had a lot of reflection on, like, I didn't have that growing up. I don't have that in my family at all. Most of our family still thinks that we're crazy. Also, I'm now one of the people who stand like this when I worship. So we didn't have that biologically in our journey at all. And so there are some times that was really tough for us, and times that we felt alone in that. But God knew that we didn't have that growing up, and He gave us our first small group, and He sent us to Roblin, and He gave us our second small group, and all of those people that were at Kingswood to help us along the way. And that 4 months that we were back in school that were really strange because of COVID and everything, I'll touch on that in a second, but I just had a lot of thought and reflection about those people and God's faithfulness to us and their faithfulness to God to be able to unconditionally support us. So Steve lived in the basement of Frank and Linda's, and they never expected anything in return. And that was such an example of God's love that we never had in our lives, and was really strange for us for, the whole 4 years really. But that kind of unconditional giving, never expecting anything in return, is something we never had. And so the cloud of witnesses to us are everybody, Roblin Church, basically, because that's the only real Christians that we had growing up. And so that was kind of everything coming together for us.
And now the greatest joy I have in that is that witnessing continues, and now my kids get to see that. They grow up in that, and that just, that makes me excited to continue my growth with God and to see where He's going to take them now that hopefully we've done a good enough job to lay their foundation on solid grounds where I think the future is just pretty exciting now. So.
Yeah. Also, another part of so we had only gone about 6 weeks. I think it was 5. He thinks it was 6. I'm probably right. And in the whole journey, in September when we went back, it was in the middle of COVID. We actually, in April, school of 2020, schools closed and everything, and we were in New Brunswick, and borders were closing in New Brunswick, and you couldn't get anywhere, so Steve couldn't come down, and we didn't know what we were going to do, and we were going to stay put, and then they made the decision that schools weren't opening again, and so we said, well, we can do New Brunswick school from home, and I kind of wanted to wait until I was done school. Anyway, we decided on a Thursday night at about 11 o'clock when I was in tears because I didn't think I could do school at home with the 3 kids doing school at home, that I was going to go, we were going to come back. And we packed everything and came back, and we left Saturday morning. Yeah, so we decided on the Thursday night and came home on Saturday morning. and spent the whole summer in the Carney's basement. And then we went back to school and we had to quarantine, and the kids came back with me still. We quarantined for 2 weeks, and Steve couldn't come and see us, and so it was actually 10 weeks that we went without seeing him before he could come down. And he quarantined for 2 weeks and then was with us for a week, and then he came back, and he was here for 7 weeks before he came and moved us back here in October, middle of October of 2020. We bought a house, and I didn't see it until December 20th. So that was, we bought our house, okay, I'm only telling you the story because it's a cool story.
You want to tell?
Go ahead.
Well, I did all the shopping.
So we had been looking all summer for houses, Steve and I and our real estate agent had gone to probably about 10, 15 houses, and we put offers in on three or four, and every time we did, there was about 20 people that bid on the house, and
there was always somebody with more money.
Yeah.
There was always somebody with more money.
It would go for like $100,000 over asking price, and it was crazy, and it was a market we couldn't purchase in. And then
by October.
Yeah, so in October, there was one house that Steve really liked, and he went and saw it, and he said, we're going to put an offer in on it, and we went to, and the other real estate agent said, sorry, it's sold, and so we said, okay, that's kind of it, and
that one was in August.
Oh, in August.
Yeah, in August.
So there's one more house and Steve said, well, maybe it's just not the time right now. And there was one other house that we had seen, and so Steve said, okay, well, I'll go look at it, and they were holding offers. And so we did something bold in that market, and we put an offer in less than the asking price. We hadn't done that yet. We had always gone over because everybody was going over.
we went $25,000 below asking. And then we said, oh, by the way, your brand new appliances that you just bought last year, you're going to leave them in the house because they were going to take them with them.
Yeah.
And then it was conditional a bunch of stuff. So anyway, our real estate agent was like, we'll try it. So the offer went in, and of course it was that whole thing where they held offers until the Monday, and then you had an 8-hour window to make your offers, and typically everybody would put an offer higher than the other, and then there was a bidding war. In this case, our offer went in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 6 o'clock that night, my real estate agent, real estate agent calls and says, well, I don't know how that works, but you're the only offer, and it's been accepted. So to this day, he keeps saying, I don't know how you guys manage it. I'm like, we didn't do it.
Yeah.
We didn't do it.
So that was like the final, well, I mean, there's still lots of years to come, but for the journey that we've been on in like the last 4 years, that was kind of like the final thing for us to say, like, we followed God in this journey, and there were times that me for sure wanted to quit, and that things were really difficult. There was lots of, it wasn't just conversation, there was lots of tears on the phone saying, I don't know how I'm going to get through this semester or this week or this test or any of that stuff, but through all of that, like in the end, for that to happen, it was like, okay, like that's kind of like a sign for us that was what we were supposed to be doing, and we were supposed to be coming back, and we had all of that kind of figured out. So
yeah, that was kind of God giving us the final high five of that journey we have been on for the last, which started 10 years ago.
yeah.
We know there's another journey ahead of us. Do we know what it looks like? No. I mean, really, the only way we could share this testimony with you guys is because we can look back on what he's done, and not once did he ever show us what was going to come ahead, but we learned to trust as these little things were falling into place. So I think he's really increased our trust. our faith, and we just are so excited for what the future holds now, for us as a family and for our kids and everything else. So, yeah. And Roblin.
We're done?
Yeah.
We're done, thank you.